This video was made possible thanks to the support of our fantastic patrons. You guys are truly awesome. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Best in the Multiverse, brought to you by Affinity for Commander. My name is Alex.
And my name's Martin.
And today we are joined by a very special guest, none other than the Baron from Aristocards. Greetings, my lord.
Good day to you gentlemen at Affinity for Commander and you commoners out there. I am the Baron from the show Aristocards, representing only the finest in tabletop card gaming. I'm quite happy to be here today on Affinity for Commander telling you about the Temur colors, the wedge in Magic the Gathering that comprises red, green, and blue. In fact, there are very few legendary creatures that we can use as commanders in this wedge, but I am certainly happy to tell you about a couple of them today.
Such a respectable fellow. So without further ado, let us proceed with our list of the top 5 commanders in the Temur color combination. Number 5.
At number 5 on our list we have Sora Dragonclaw. For 2 generic, a green, a blue and a red, Sora is a 6/6 legendary human warrior with flash. He also cannot be countered and reads creature spells you control can't be countered and other creatures you control have trample. Sora is a great bit of flavour win, with each of his abilities coming from one of his 3 colours. Blue grants him flash, green makes him uncounterable, and red gives him trample. And a 6/6 body for 5 mana is also nothing to scoff at. One of the great things about Sora is that he can serve as an answer to any control heavy deck that might be at the table. Being uncounterable and then giving this ability to all of your creature spells is going to make that one Baral player very angry. They'll be bitterly sitting there looking at their counter spells in hand with increasing levels of frustration. And who doesn't enjoy messing with those blue players? When building a Sora deck you should be looking for big, chunky creatures to take advantage of both of their abilities not to be countered and their newfound trampliness. But if we're giving trample to our creatures, we'll need cards that gain value from dealing damage to our opponents. For instance, Shaman of the Great Hunt really cares about creatures making it past, or in this case through, your opponent's creatures with damage. This then allows us to buff our team with some tasty +1/+1 counters, and when the game's been going for a while and you're low on cards, the Shaman's second ability is a fantastic way of restocking your hand. Speaking of card draw, Aura and Frostfang needs our creatures to collide with our opponents to get those sweet draw triggers. But why not just skip the whole drawing cards to cast process with Intet the Dreamer? Intet is a card that is great for cheating spells onto the stack without the need to pay for their mana cost. For only 3 mana, when Intet deals damage, you get to exile a top card of your library, which you can then cast for free. And the addition of trample granted by our commander definitely helps with getting over any pesky flying blockers that our opponents might have. But if we're looking for cards to really take advantage of the trample that Sora provides, then we need some power raising effects. God Eternal Ronus doubles the power of each creature we control when he enters the battlefield, and even gives them temporary vigilance so we can still hold up blockers for any retaliation attacks. And the Evergreen, well, Ever-Red-Green, Xenagos God of Revels, doubles the power of one of our creatures every single turn and even grants them haste. How generous of him. And finally, no deck containing green would be complete without some form of ramp. How about more creatures? And no, I don't mean those puny 1/1 elves, I'm talking about the big boys now. Goreclaw Terror of Qualsisma provides a fantastic cost reduction to anything with power 4 or greater, including our commander, and even gives our team a nice little buff when he attacks. Savage Ventmore nets us 6 whole mana to use in our second main phase to keep piling on uncounterable creatures. And even smaller mana dorks such as Somberwald Sage and Shaman of Forgotten Ways are still super helpful to bring out our commander as quickly as possible to get that damage in faster. And if an opponent happens to have 0 creatures, then the Shaman's ability simply reads, 11 mana, each player with no creatures loses the game. In a creature heavy deck like Sora's, this effect is just delightful.
Number 4.
Yes, the first Temur colored commander I'm here to discuss with you is Yasuva Dragonclaw, as you can see in my hat there, and quite coincidentally, she was the very first deck tech that I did on the Aristocards program. Please be sure to see the link up there, then you can visit that deck tech. After this one, of course, you must stick around until this one is done in its entirety. Ah, yes, so Yasova Dragonclaw, why do we like her? Well, we have the Temur colors of blue for control, red for ramp and big creatures, and red to give those creatures haste, and for destruction and board wipe type effects. Yasova might not seem that powerful at first, and certainly she's probably not going to be a 10. However, she can be quite a fun commander to create a deck around. First of all, she's a mana sink. Therefore, if you have extra mana to spend, you can use her ability. It's quite a powerful ability indeed. Therefore, it will reward you for doing all those kinds of ramp type effects with those rampant growths and Kodama's reaches and commander spheres. Anything that will get you more mana out on the board, you will be able to use her ability throughout the entirety of the game. Now you might look at her and say she's only good as a Voltron commander, but this is not true. There are plenty of cards within the color of blue that can make your opponent's creatures smaller, with cards such as Turn to Frog, or Rapid Hybridization, or Polymorphous Jest. There are so many of these cards where you can manipulate your opponent's cards and then use Yasova's ability to take control of them. And then once you take control of them, you could sacrifice them to something such as an Ashnod's Altar or a Culling Deus. There are so many other things that we could do. She is such, believe it or not, a very versatile commander that can be a significant threat to your opponents with smaller creatures on the board.
Number 3. Moving on to our third Temur commander, we have Omnath, Locus of the Royal. He's chilled out a bit since his last appearance. Presumably taking a dip in that stream really cooled him off. This iteration of Omnath is a 3/3 legendary elemental for 1 generic, 1 red, 1 green and 1 blue mana. He reads, when Omnath, Locus of the Royal enters the battlefield, it deals damage to any target equal to the number of elementals you control. And whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, put a +1/+1 counter on target elemental you control. If you control 8 or more lands, draw a card. Now this commander should be built in one way and one way only, Elemental Tribal. With his first ability being dependent on the number of elementals you control, having a board full of them turns your commander's ETB from a gut shot into a searing wind or above. So let's take a look at some of the great elementals we'll be working with. Smoke Braider helps us cast our elementals with some brilliantly costed ramp and colour fixing. Brighthearth Banneret lets us throw out elementals more quickly with a static cost reduction. And Incandescent Soulstoke provides a neat little anthem effect, and an exceptionally good impression of sneak attack for elementals as well. And finally we have the loveliness that is Flamekin Harbinger, because who doesn't love Worldly Tutor on a stick with a relevant creature type? There are also elementals we can use to help take advantage of Omnath's second ability. Fertilid lets us search for a land and put it into play at the cost of 1/+1/+1 counter, which can then be put back on the Fertilid with Omnath's ability. A lovely bit of synergy to grab all of our basics from the deck and draw a good number of cards. Risen Reef helps us to grab more lands from the top of our deck. Zendikar's Royal can generate us 2/2 elementals for each land we put into play. And finally, Multani Yavamaya's Avatar is an elemental that should enter the battlefield with approximately 20 power from all the land grabbing we've been doing. A great curve topper that our opponents won't really be able to get rid of, given that you can bounce 2 lands to your hand to return the Avatar from your graveyard to your hand. And this isn't even really a downside, as it allows us to have more landfall triggers for Omnath and any other elementals we might have on the field, such as Avenger of Zendikar, Royal Elemental, or Omnath, Locus of Rage. Now I know the tokens the Avenger produces aren't elementals, but he is, so we'll let it slide. But these cards don't win the game by themselves. Okay, maybe old Omnath does, but we can't put all our elementals into one basket. No, we need elementals that pack a real punch for that. Vigor is a fantastic card that thankfully is also an elemental. Making our creatures essentially indestructible is a very strong mechanic. Just ask Iroas. But the fact that this bull, turtle, Frankenstein looking thing gives our creatures counters equal to the damage they take means your opponents have to really think hard about how and where to block. Titania, Priest of Argoth, is yet another powerful elemental who this time produces more elementals every time you crack a fetch or use any manner of harrow or crop rotation type effects. And finally, Soul the Harvest is a great way to really drive home how we are never running out of cards, and really shows how elementals are one of the best secretly supported tribes in all of the multiverse. A powerful commander with low CMC that rewards you for playing elementals with a huge damaging bolt-like ability, and then later in the game a landfall effect that buffs our elementals and draws us cards. And once again, blown away by the design here. Red for the damage based removal, green for the +1/+1 counters, and blue for the card draw. Really nailing it here, Wizards. Good job. Number 2.
At our number 2 spot we have the King of Cascade himself, Maelstrom Wanderer. For 5 generic and Temur, we get a 7/5 legendary elemental who reads, all creatures you control have haste, which does include himself by the way, and Cascade, Cascade. This means that on cast of this swole boy, you exile cards from the top of your deck until you exile a card of CMC 7 or less and play it for free, twice. That's 3 cards for the price of 1. Now just on the face of him, at least I believe that's a face, this is a powerhouse of a card. Cascading into 2 7 CMC cards is value, pure and simple. Then on top of that, if you cascade into a creature, that creature now has haste. You better be careful when playing against it, just lock it away in the moon or something. But the Wanderer does also bring to light a rarely touched upon tribe in Magic, Tribal 7-drops. Divine Primordial lets us steal any value instants and sorceries from our opponent's graveyards. Now yes, the target in our bin is probably going to be just ramp. But hey, ramp is incredibly useful when our deck is composed of high CMC cards. Or if we're in the mood to steal even more of our opponent's stuff, Blatant Thievery grabs us the best 3 permanents on the board. And these stolen permanents will also be granted haste thanks to our Wanderer, allowing us to attack in immediately with the greatest power our opponents have to offer. On the same thought as this, Molten Primordial allows us to temporarily gain control of a creature we want from each of our opponents. Granted, it's only for a turn, but that should be all the time we need to knock at least one person out of the game. Now having big impactful cards is all well and good, but the thing that pumps the Wanderer up on this list is the ability to give all of our creatures haste. Cards like Balefire Dragon, Rampaging Brontodon and Droxef Maw of Flames become infinitely better with haste. Dealing 6 damage to all of an opponent's creatures because they didn't expect a hasty dragon can be backbreaking in low to the ground decks, and a surprise humongous dinosaur trample is also pretty scary. Something similar can be said for Dragonlord Ataka and Ataka World Render. The Dragonlord will clear out any small blockers, whilst the World Render will, worst case scenario, give itself double strike and hit for 12 damage the second it comes down. Not bad for a creature you didn't pay any mana for, really. Now this deck does have another side to it. It is primarily 50% 7 CMC cards and 50% ramp to keep casting the Wanderer over and over again to get those sweet cascade triggers. This means that the usual suspects of Cultivate, Explosive Vegetation and Kodama's Reach make an appearance, but this deck needs more than just these, so thank Urza it's in green. Circuitous Route, Boundless Realms, Ranger's Path and a personal favourite of Alex's, Tempt for Discovery, are all necessary to get as many lands out as quickly as possible. And all of these can also be cascaded into, meaning that you'll have the mana to cast the big spells that you'll otherwise be drawing. Not what you ideally want to happen, but deck thinning is deck winning as they say. Now obviously if you've got the dollar to drop on this guy, then cards like Sensei's Divining Top and Scroll Rack push the Wanderer up a good few notches in terms of power. Being able to fix the top few cards of your library turns a fun game of guess what's coming next into the 100% certainty of Dragonlords coming very soon. This can also be accomplished with cards such as Worldly Tutor, Mystical Tutor and Sylvan Tutor, placing the exact card that you want on top of your library. But you didn't come here to be told that tutors are good in EDH. A few artifacts that I do have to mention though are Ashnod's Altar and Phyrexian Altar. Once Maelstrom Wanderer has done his trick once, you might start to run out of steam soon after. So the option to sacrifice our commander to then replay him and double cascade again can be just a sweet piece of tech we need to keep the pressure piled up. Not to mention the altars give us the very mana you need to recast him. Overall, Maelstrom Wanderer is a dominating presence on the board, with decent stats, some incredibly strong keywords, and a haste anthem for your entire board. Definitely worth the number 2 spot on our list.
Number 1.
Now we come to what is quite possibly the most popular legendary creature to use as a commander within the Temur colors, Anima, Soul of Elements. While many legendary creatures from the older commander sets have lost a bit of their luster over time, Anima seems to have lost none of his steam. He certainly has gone in and out of favor, but he is certainly still viable and competitive today. His protection from white and black protects him from certainly many of the destroy effects that we encounter within this format. Of course, many of the white single target removals such as Path to Exile or Swords to Plowshares, and certainly many of the black effects as well that like to put, say, -1/-1 counters, Tragic Slip. There are certainly a number of spot removal black cards that protects Anima and keeps him on the board. And not only does his ability help for us to cheat out some mana costs of larger creatures, especially morph type characters, an Animorphs deck is certainly viable where you pay the 3 morph cost, and of course Anima reduces the cost each time you put them out until you're playing morph characters on the board for free. They're certainly also popular for artifact creatures and Eldrazi, which are mostly colorless. Again, Anima can certainly make them rather cheap rather quickly. But perhaps one of his crowning achievements is the fact that he can rebuild the board rather quickly as well. If a board wipe happens and you lose all of your creatures, we can get Anima out there again in the late game, building back up those counters and making our creatures cheap to play again and quickly rebuilding our board state. That is certainly one thing I believe is underestimated within the Commander format, is how are you going to rebuild your board after a board wipe? Anima tackles that problem head on, therefore he's useful at pretty much any point in the game. Anima Soul of Elements is certainly competitive and a wise choice within the Temur wedge.
And that is it for our list of the top 5 Temur commanders. A huge thank you to the Baron for joining us for this video. If you haven't seen his content before, we highly recommend that you visit his channel. There's a link in the description below.
Yes, please feel free to come and join me over on Arista Cards. Thank you so much, commoners, and cheers to you.
But as always, now we want to know what you guys think. Did we miss out your favourite commander? Or do you think that Anima isn't as powerful as the Baron thinks? Whatever your thoughts, be sure to leave them in the comments below. Also, don't forget to give this video a like and hit that subscribe button whilst you're there. It really helps the channel out a lot. As always, you can follow us on Twitter at 4Commander, and if you really like us, you could consider becoming a patron of the channel yourself. Links are all in the description. That'll be all from us for now, and as always, we will see you next time.